Welcome to Nerdities. Bitches.
No topic too absurd, no statement too asinine, no question too interesting. That's right, folks. We have another Nerdities interview show. I am Mike.
I am Justin.
Kyle.
Vin. And Joe.
And our guest this week is Chris Saloff. So I have...
Close. It's Saloff. But
Saloff. Okay, I wasn't sure.
That's why Jeff probably gave you Chris Michael, because it's so much easier than my last name.
I wasn't sure what to go, because, that is the name we were given, and then when it comes up like this, I'm like, oh, no. Oh, that's another question I should have asked going into it, but I'm not a complete professional. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, so, sorry. Go by Chris Michael, and most of my go by Christopher Michael, because my middle name is Michael. My last name, as you can see, is brutally tough to pronounce, so I don't really normally use it, but my full name is Christopher Michael Saloff. I'm the creator of the comic Crit, and it stands for Constantly Running Into Trouble. It's based on a D&D game.
Okay, so that's part of the breakdown that we got initially. It's what I've kind of figured is it's essentially a D&D game you guys were running, and then you took some of the conversation you were having and turned it into the story. Am I reading that right?
Close. I actually turned the whole thing into a comic. We played the first session, and it was just so ridiculously stupid and funny that we talked about it for like a month, and I drew it just for us, and then it kind of snowball affected into now 8 issues in 4 years, and I'm drawing everything because that's what the DM does, right? So I storyboard it based on the recordings of the game session, and like for about a month I just do nothing but listen to a 6-hour session of my friends being idiots. I take notes and report it out, send it out to them, say, hey, like this is kind of what I think works, because if you've played D&D, you know that there's about 2/3 of what you can actually use. That other 1/3 is dumb banter, somebody talking about something stupid you don't want anybody else to hear about. Or sometimes it's just something that leads absolutely nowhere, like you have all of those situations. So I kind of trim it down to a story that is cohesive and understandable for a reader to follow. And once I get the approval on that, I just literally start drawing, and then either I color it or I get someone else to color it depending on my time frames. And once it's done, I letter it, and we read it 2 or 3 times to make sure that everyone's dialogue matches what they've said, or give them a chance to maybe rethink something they said. And one off it goes to a final proofread after it gets proofread, with all the mistakes that I made because I'm an idiot. Then it goes back off to the printer. That's the process.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody use that process, because writing can be so tricky to come up not just with a concept, but with actual dialogue and stuff, to use fluid conversations as the building block and just kind of whittle away at it. That's a great idea, I think. Now, you said only a certain percentage of it is actually usable. How much of it is the DM yelling at the players because they don't know what they have in their inventory? Because our D&D game thus far, I'd say about 25% of it is Justin, who's the DM, getting pissed off at us that we don't know exactly what's in our item bag.
So luckily, because it's a superhero-based campaign, most of their inventory is limited. But in issue 6, there is a moment where one of the characters who uses guns runs in. And first, they were working in the coffee shop because it's, not everybody in D&D to want to make their own business, their side hustle. They want to make money without having to go and do adventuring. So they buy this coffee shop. They're selling coffee in the middle of the street while keeping an eye on what's going on in the city. Something happens. They have to run in. This big giant robot's there. They have to fight. And he goes, I'm going to pull out my pistol or he's like, I'm going to pull out a grenade and throw it at it. And I was like, you were just working in the coffee shop. You have an apron on. you don't have your guns. In no situation did you say, I'm taking my apron off and grabbing my weapons and running in. You just said, I take off to see what's going on. And he's like, well, then what do I have in my pocket? I'm like, I don't know, a bag of coffee beans? So he throws the bag of coffee beans. He's like, I have weapon, 1d4. So there is some of that in there. I try to keep the the D&D only content, someone who only understands D&D would get those. I kind of keep that to a minimum. There's a line, I didn't even roll initiative. Some of those things to where a D&D nerd would get it, but someone who doesn't play D&D isn't going to be like, oh, I don't understand this book because it's nothing but terms I've never heard of.
Right. How big of a pain in the ass is it to get everyone together to actually play the game? Because I know for us, that's the biggest sticking point.
Yeah.
It's not. So Crit, the story of Crit's actually done. We played it for 5 years straight, once or twice a month. We just had a WhatsApp chat, and we would say, hey, these are the dates I'm available. Who wants to play? Saturday the 23rd works. Perfect. Cool. See you guys at 12:30. But we've been friends, I don't know, almost 15, 20 years. And I think we've played D&D the entire time. So, it's not anything uncommon for us to be able to get together. It's something we really enjoy doing.
Great that you guys have... You want to go, Cal?
I was just going to say, so how many other games of D&D had you played prior to this one? The inspiration for the book.
My first game, it's not very PG. My first game session. I don't know if this is a PG.
Fucking egg!
No. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first time I played D&D, I was a district manager for GameStop. That's how I met everybody that I play with.
No.
They were all employees, or they worked in the mall where one of my stores was. And they kept bugging me to come play D&D because I got along with them. They were cool. And I looked at them and I was like, I'm a nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd. I like sci-fi anyway. So they put together this Mass Effect game that I'm supposed to go play. Show up. The guy that was going to run it he couldn't come out that night. So one of the other guys was like, oh, I have this game. I'll just give you this cool character. And he gives me it's like no paper, pens. It's just a D20. And it was some dumb idea that he had that he could just let us all roll a D20 and he would tell us what happened. And I hated it. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I roll a die and I say, I'd like to do this. And he decides if I can or not. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't roll damage. He just tells me what I do.
What was the name of the game? Playing God?
It literally was. It was like, he was the almighty, and he put us in pretty much Eternia. My character was He-Man mixed with Mr. Fantastic. So I had the power of body. I was super strong, and I could turn my body into pretty much whatever I wanted. And then my buddy, he gave him the power of mind, and that's the dumbest thing to give to this guy because he's really smart. And so we both hated the entire session. We're there for about 5 hours, and he puts this demon god in front of us that's almost impossible to kill. And he's like, yeah, there's no way you're going to be able to beat this, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, wait a minute. I have the power of body. This guy's the power of mind. He goes before me. I said, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to daze him and just, enthrall this thing to where he can't do anything but pay attention to you. So he has the power of mind. He's the most, the smartest being in the world. He can control everybody's mind. So it works. He's like, yeah, the DM guy was like, yeah, that works. And I'm like, okay, so it's my turn. I have the power of body. This is some big, giant, monster thing, right? He's like, yeah, okay, well, I want to flank it. I want to get behind him. I want to flank him. Okay, well, he's massive. You're little. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to, grow to the size of him, like Paul Bunyan this thing. And he goes, okay, yeah, that's fine. He's like, going to attack it from behind? I'm like, yes, I'm going to attack it. I said, I'm going to mount it. I'm going to grapple this thing. He's like, cool. And I said, and I want my dick to get as big as it can, go through its ass, through its mouth, and impale this thing. And he looks at me.
Feeling that's where it was going.
He closes the book. He's like, angels descend from heaven and destroy Earth. We're done. I'm going home. He never played again. And then we played Mass Effect after that. I really enjoyed that. But my first session, I absolutely hated because it was just the dumbest thing I'd ever played. And then they were like, please come back for Mass Effect. It's a lot of fun. So we played that for about 3 years. We played a couple of games in between. I'm a huge like Star Wars nerd, so we played some Star Wars stuff. Finally played some, traditional D&D. I say total I have about 10 different games under my belt before we played this one. And this is the second time I DM. The first time it's actually a side story that is in the back of some of the Crit books called Mr. Wizard and Friends. It's absolutely stupid. It ends with Hades taking over Justin Bieber, and there's a wrestling match in Australia, which is the pit of hell, and Randy Savage comes out and suplexes Justin Bieber. That's the other story that we have going.
Why?
Well, the Justin Bieber and Hades thing seems kind of redundant. So does Australia being the pit of hell, but that's just like...
That was my first time DMing it, and I was just like, this is what's going to happen. And it's called Mr. Wizard and Friends, and it's really stupid. What I did was I turned that into a TV show that exists within Crit, so we can keep kind of our games together.
That's fantastic. As a DM, even though maybe some of your members of the game might think your goal is to kill them, you're not actually trying to kill them, right?
No, actually, I really do. Like, my goal every game, because I mean, realistically, they're in a world set where they're going in to fight things that would want to kill them.
Sure.
So there is that slight goal, but then the artist in me sometimes kicks in, and I'm like, man, if I kill him, I got to draw a new character, and I really don't want to do that. Really, we put it on the table in the beginning that characters might die, but it's got to be fun. If the death comes with a toll of the game not being fun, that's different than having a character die and it be the most epic thing ever, and he's like, that's awesome, my character, we laid him to rest in a cool way. I never want to sacrifice fun just for being God.
Right.
So I too am a visual artist. I penciled and colored the comic we have. I noticed in your style, which is a very clean style, I like it a lot. The covers, at the very least, seem pretty inspired by 90s like Image Comics extreme books. Is that an accurate portrayal?
Yeah, so I've colored a couple things. Because I do it all and I want to get it done as fast as possible. I'm not the fastest with coloring, and
Same.
So I have a guy who I saw his work and I said, hey, I'm going to send you some of the old extreme stuff. Can we do that? And he was like, yep, I love it. Let's do it. And so, I got into comics in the 90s. I love the old, all those, the Image stuff is what I grew up on. And so I love the high contrast, shiny stuff. Yeah, so you nailed that on the head.
There was never a more in-your-face time than the 90s. I started collecting in 1990, maybe 91, when Jim Lee, that first X-Men 1 issue,
Mm-hmm.
when it was really popping, and then they go over an Image and it's just style. So anytime someone's got an influence from that era, I could laser in on it. The kindred spirit kind of thing, because that was so influential to me as a kid too.
Yeah, I love some of the new stuff that's coming out. There are some artists I see and I'm like, oh man, those colors. But no art and no colors that I've seen really hit me like the first Image books do, ever. I even still go back to those books. Now the writing is what it is. I was in 90, I wasn't even 10 years old. It was just big dudes with guns and, women. And you just got excited about it, and you read the book for what it was. Spawn's got a shoelace in his face, and that's really cool.
I think a big part of it, too, is right at that edge, right at that border, nobody was doing computer colors. Everything was just solid, maybe 2 shades. And then they start doing colors, everyone's just locked on their stuff. So it's such a big, vibrant jump that and they put so much time into it. I think that was like the majority of their budget was coloring. So yeah, there will never be anything that looks as good. Like there was like Curse of Spawn or something. There's one page where there was just like bubbles coming up when he was dropped in the water or something. There may never be a more beautiful page of comic art to me than that.
Well, the Curse of Spawn books were very artistically like just beautiful. Like I just loved all the art style they used in that. It was completely different than the Spawn books, and I really loved those.
Yeah, is at the point where like McFarlane just wanted to branch out and just give work to whoever was doing stuff that looked kind of good. Can't remember who was doing it at that point. But yeah, it was really, we'll figure out a plot later. It was almost like the old Marvel method. We'll figure out a story and a plot, just draw something hardcore.
Yep.
Yeah. Justin, you got a question?
Yeah. Chris, you said you're a big Star Wars fan, yeah?
Yes, depending, but I love I love most of Star Wars.
Okay. I'm heading in the right direction then. How you feeling about the Acolyte?
You're gonna go there.
The power of many have spoken. That's all. No, I actively not watched it. A couple years ago, when I actually started doing the comics all the time, I said, "Hey, time is money to me because it's like a currency in my life. Do I want to spend my time on something that I arguably don't like, or do I want to spend my time doing something constructive like drawing a book?" And so after Mandalorian Season 3, I said, you know what? Until one of my friends tells me that I have to watch this show, and all of my friends hate modern Star Wars, so if they tell me I have to watch it, it's got to be good. Except for one guy who likes She-Hulk. I don't trust anything coming out of his mouth anymore. That's it. I won't watch anything until somebody tells me it's actually worth my time.
It's good. It's a good way to handle it. The Acolyte's not great.
I'm hate
I really
watching
don't want
it.
to give them any of my hate views either. Like a lot of their views come from people that don't want to watch it. They just watch it because they hate it.
That's pretty
and
much.
I would much rather go watch like a '90s cartoon.
That's how it exists on our show, our other show, which is just pop culture news and reviews and stuff. Like I think most of us are actively hate watching it at this point.
I'm using it to test my Jedi abilities. I don't want to hate, so I'm watching it meditatively like, oh, okay, that was a story. All right, and done.
I just want the writing to get better. The writing and the acting to get better.
So you want the show to just be
That's a
better.
sad thing. I've seen that. Yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube, and that's where I absorb most of it to see, if it's going to be worth my time. And I don't base my opinions off what everybody else says, but at least I get some of the clips. And the acting that I've seen, even in the 2 to 3 second clips they have, it might as well have been a CW show.
It's worse.
Yeah,
I don't like the marketing aspect of it. They marketed it, let's be real. They marketed it to a different group, and that's okay. A few years ago, I was on a show, and I was going back and forth with a guy. I was very passionate because I love Star Wars, and he's much older than me. He said, at some point, you've got to realize that you're not their market, and you're not who they want watching it. That's okay. You have the ones that were marketed to you. Just watch the ones that aren't, and then see what happens. And my friends and I talked about it, and they agreed. Like, actually, that makes sense. Like, this isn't our Star Wars. It's somebody else's. That's cool. It's like D&D. Like my D&D game is mine. It'll always be mine. You might not like it, but it's mine. I still have the books. I still have the old video games, and I still have the original. And honestly, even the prequel trilogy trumps everything that they're coming out with now. So, midichlorians and all.
I've found a lot of good stuff in the Disney era, in pretty much everything they've put out. Even Book of Boba Fett. I'm really struggling to find something positive in this one. I've yet to find anything.
I didn't hate Book of Boba Fett. The problem I had with Boba Fett was they already gave Boba Fett we wanted with Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, like if you went back and read some of the Bounty Hunter books, they were inspired. That's what inspired the original Mandalorian series. Then they bring Boba Fett in. They're like, well, what do we do? We can't have two badass Mandalorians because then we're just writing the same show. We're gonna have him, riding around looking like an idiot. Like we're gonna humanize him, which is complete opposite of what they needed to do with him. The only reason he was really popular was because how he looked to begin with. Let's be real. He got popular over being a toy that you had to mail in for, and that's it. And he had like 3 seconds of time. And when they take a character like that and they humanize them and they give them a face and then they give them a personality, everything we built up in our heads is gone.
Yeah, you better do something really amazing with him if you're going to take away the man of mystery.
Exactly.
And they didn't do anything. They did some fun-ish stuff and then had the slowest chase I've ever seen in a Star Wars show.
It was so bad they had to put the Mandalorian in there to fix it.
Yeah, it really was. It was like 1/4 the Mandalorian. At that point, I was like, "What the fuck am I watching here?" Oh, now I enjoy it. Now I enjoy it because the characters I like.
They didn't have a good show, and might as well just throw Mando in there to boost the ratings.
Yeah, sad but true. Joe.
So, Chris, I'm reading on hbhcomics.com. I'm going through your issues. Your artwork is phenomenal, by the way.
Nice plug, Joe.
Thank
nice
you.
plug.
One thing that caught my eye, especially, was under your unusual suspects for your featured characters, Spectre and Samiti.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the Bond fan?
What's that?
Who's the Bond fan?
Oh, actually, nobody. So,
Story of Joe's life.
I like Bond, don't get me wrong, but nobody in the group. The only reason Samedi is the cat is because Spectre in real life, the character who plays him, he's allergic to cats. And
As am I.
he is a DM himself, so he tries to be OP, and he gives himself a familiar. And he sends me all the stats, and I said, that's cool. I'm like, but it's a cat. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, when we started this game, I told you every character was based on you as an individual. Like, when we started the campaign, you are the character, you get powers, what do you do? I said, so if you had powers, you'd still be allergic to cats. Therefore, if he's out too long, you take negatives. So he suffers from exhaustion when the cat's out too long. And I named him Samedi because the whole book is based in New Orleans, and you can't have a book in New Orleans without having Barons. I changed the spelling to SEM instead of SAM because in this story he just took the likeness, it's a spiritual cat. When he took the form, he kind of adjusted the name because he's a cat and he's a dick and that anyway. And that cat actually smokes cigars, and in multiple points in the book shows up completely hammered. He gets drunk all the time.
The cat looks awesome. I love that.
Let me show you this. You'll like this.
Joe.
Everybody liked the cat so much, I had to get a plush.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome.
So,
That's really cool.
I've sold 195 of these things, actually. So I've got to reorder them.
Good business.
Yeah.
You brought up the powers and that's a question I had going into it. Was there any butting of heads when it came to picking powers, or did you distribute them?
No. So originally when I started this, we hadn't actually played as this group in almost 10 years. We had played together individually. A few guys had, wives, kids, life. So I was going out on a limb, and I said, hey, I have this idea for superhero D&D, something we talked about we never got to do. And I called everybody, got them together, and they're like, well, what kind of class am I? I said, well, we got about a month to plan this. Why don't you all tell me the hero you'd like to be, and that way I can build the class appropriately. And, Boulder was like, I want to be, my buddy Terrell, he's like, I just want to be myself as All Might, so figure, he's like, but I would probably have like a really dumb personality. He's like, it's Eddie Murphy as All Might is what he wants to be. I'm like, okay, pretty simple, barbarian monk, and one guy, Reach was, my buddy Obi, I'm just going to be an artificer, let me mess with computers, I'm happy. Spectre, he was a warlock, necromancer, he wanted all these different builds. Finally, we settled on him having 3 different familiars that he gets at a point. So he gets an owl, a cat, and a chameleon, and they all change his power set. So he'll have like bardic capabilities, he'll have warlock, and then he'll have kind of like a necromancer wizardy thing. And then Caliber, the red guy, he's like, you ever play Warhammer 40K? I'm like, yeah, I like my wallet. He goes, I'm a null. I'm immune to magic. I don't believe in this bullshit. Because he doesn't like superheroes. And I think at the time he was watching, he always bases his characters off something he was watching. And I think he was watching something in anime that the guy was like immune to everything. He's like, well, the good thing is I'm immune to it all. The bad thing is they can't heal me. Like any magical healing, anything that has to do with that, like it can't help me either. And so he thought he was big and bad until I started throwing robots in the game. I'm like, well, if magical characters can't hurt you, I'm just going to throw giant ass robots to stomp on you, and nothing can, like, you can't argue with that. He's like, oh man. So that's why he gets a
Holy crap.
character. Bones, the big guy. He wanted to be a cleric paladin, which is completely and utterly. But we did it, and the character's name is Bones because he thought of himself as, like, if he were to get superpowers, he actually in real life has the brittle bone disease, and he's like, I just want to be super durable. Like, if I were to have a superpower, I would want to be like really, really durable. And so, what's more durable than giving a healing tank to somebody? You know,
That's pretty great. Like real life influencing like the wishes you might have based on the issues you have in life. That's excellent. Okay, we unfortunately we're coming into the home stretch. Want to throw out any of your socials, any of the plugs?
Yeah. Instagram is the best way to reach me, at Homebrewed Comics. I got a website, homebrewedcomics.com, and the Kickstarter drops tomorrow at 8 p.m. I am doing a live launch on Instagram starting at 7. So if you want to pop in there, anyone that backs the Kickstarter between tomorrow and July 1st gets free U.S. shipping on the early bird tiers.
All right, smart move. Thanks for your time, Chris. Hope we can help out in any way. Hope our time and your time together was worthwhile for everybody. I got everything out of the way. So generally with our interview shows, we don't end it the same way. We do our normal show, but the last word is always the same. Fuck bye. That's our classic. That's a line from my dearly departed idiot brother. Say it if you want to. Everybody, sound off. Fuck bye.
Fuck bye.
Fuck bye.
Okay.
And root.
Because of the end of civilization, the Clamp Cable Network now leaves the air. We hope you have enjoyed our programming, but more importantly, we hope you have enjoyed life.